Welcome to Amazon Legends, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became power sellers, also providers specializing in helping sellers, aggregators that acquire sellers, and former Amazonians will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here is your host, Nick Urison.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today has led a change management team for a major consulting firm dealing with complex processes. So he's intimately familiar with what it takes to deal with a complex platform such as Amazon. And today he's the founder and president of The Good, which is a conversion optimization service. And when he's not working, he likes to play basketball, as he's hard to miss, being 6'7". And that's what he enjoys doing in his free time. So with that, everybody, meet my guest, John MacDonald. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the call. So conversion is the magic bullet that cures all illnesses, so to speak, when it comes to Amazon and achieves ranking. So you have something that has been proven to increase conversion. Tell us what that is.
Well, essentially, it is conversion rate optimization on Amazon.
So, okay, so optimization of conversion. So conversion is a controversial subject, mainly because that's what everybody needs, high conversion. And there are scientific ways to deal with it, but it usually involves incorporating something into your web page that will track and measure and things like that. With Amazon, we don't have those capabilities because we're dealing with the product detail page. So what can you share with us in terms of your approach to optimize conversion?
Well, I think most people think about it like you have here, which is you can only do on-site optimization with Amazon. And I think what would be really helpful to discuss today is both on-site and off-site. There are definitely ways to optimize your site without having to embed code into the page.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're taking two different approaches. One is the actual product detail page, the things you can do to measure and optimize, and then also the external traffic that is pushing visitors to the product detail page. Is that the case?
Yes. And perhaps at times taking your content and testing it off of Amazon.com. So making sure that the content you have that ends up on Amazon has been proven to convert at the highest level possible.
Okay. So fine. So you and I had a brief conversation about this. So I'm gonna, for the listeners' benefit, I'm gonna set up our conversation so they know what's coming. So John's company has scientific methodology to measure, and with their own contribution to how they measure it, they kind of make sense of the data that is being gathered by shopper behavior. And then they translate that into things that you can do in order to increase your conversion. So we are going to discuss the things that you can do on the product detail page. And then we are also going to discuss things that you can do outside the product detail page, where you are sending visitors to that shopper, that product detail page where you expect the shopper to make a purchase. But you can do some things where you almost know ahead of time whether or not that will become a purchase. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to discuss. It's going to be very valuable for everybody who's selling on Amazon to hear what we have going on here in our conversation and then apply it. And then hopefully report back and tell us how you've done. So with that, let's jump right in. So which one is the one do you want to start with, on the product detail page or external?
Well, let's start on the product detail page. I think there'll definitely be some overlap, but let's start where most people are thinking that they have to optimize.
Okay, let's do that. So tell us where do we start when we are on the product detail page?
Well, I think you said it succinctly, which is that brands cannot add additional code to Amazon to do tracking. Normally, with conversion optimization, you would want to collect things like heat maps, click maps, scroll maps to understand how people are engaging with a page. The same you would want to do traditional conversion optimization technique of A/B testing, which Amazon has a rudimentary tool set built in, but it's nowhere near the tool sets that you can get if you were able to put some JavaScript on that page and run some code that quite frankly, Amazon just doesn't allow you to run. So outside of having that data, because in conversion optimization, you always want to be making data-backed decisions. So if you can't have those two pieces of data, we have to move on. What can you get, right? And I think it's also just, I want to talk about perspective for a second, and then I'll get into the techniques. But for the perspective of this, we're not building an airplane. We're not saving lives. It's not something that has to have a 99.99% tolerance level, and we have to be 100% sure that no one's going to get hurt. With what we're doing for optimization, if we get to 90%, I would like to know if 90% I can increase conversion, right? I'd be okay with that threshold, right? I'd be okay with 80%. So everybody has their threshold of what they need for confidence levels in optimizing, but I promise you, it does not have to be 100%. We're not saving lives here. We're not doing anything that is going to severely impact your business in a negative way if it doesn't work. So let's just go with what the odds are, right? The odds are, if it's 80%, it's great. So all of these things are not going to be what I would call statistically significant, meaning the math says 100% chance this is going to work, right? What we're looking for here is improvements that Amazon will allow us to make that will put you ahead of your competition and will help you sell more than what you would normally be able to sell, because we're working with data and we're actually able to collect some. So that's I think important just to state up front.
Yeah. So in other words, what you are saying is don't be a perfectionist, because any improvement you can make, it's going straight to your bottom line. So just to clarify, when you say 90%, 80%, are you referring to the increase, or are you referring to the actual conversion rate you are giving?
I'm referring to what percentage can I trust in the tactic we're going to use, okay, that will help increase conversions. Now, I'm not saying that the percentage that it will increase, right? I'm not saying we'll go from 2% to 4%, for instance, conversion rate. What I am saying, though, is that I have a high level of confidence that the tactic will work and will help improve conversions. The value that you get out of it will drastically change based on your price point, the product you're selling, external factors like reviews, shipping times. Are you part of Prime? Or are you not? There's a lot of other factors that will also contribute to this. But what we're looking to understand is, if you decide this tactic is right for you, can you trust the findings out of this tactic? And I would say resoundingly, yes.
Okay. All right. Good. So it's our confidence level. So don't be, ultimately what you're saying is what you are going to hear in this conversation. Is it 100%? No. Is it 90%? Probably not. But it is proven to work. And we are going to mention those with confidence. And we are confident that it's going to make a positive impact. That's all we're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay.
So let's talk about some of the tactics for on-site then.
Sure.
So the first one I would like to call up is heat maps. Now, you cannot put code on an Amazon page that will get you heat maps based on where people are going with mouse movement. That is a traditional heat map. But what you can do is you can do eye tracking heat maps on that page. This is where we have a tool set at the Good through a brand called User Input. So userinput.io. And at the end of the show, I have a discount code for everybody so that you can start taking advantage of this right away. But what you need to know here is we have a AI generated heat maps, artificial intelligence generated heat map that has about a 97% accuracy to eye tracking studies, to actual human eye tracking studies. We have fed this algorithm with hundreds and hundreds and thousands of eye tracking studies, scientific research that really allows us to understand what are people looking at on your Amazon page and how long are they looking there and what's getting their attention. So what we're able to determine from this is a couple of different things. This heat map can tell us what's attracting people's attention on the page, and are they looking at the things you want them to be looking at? Are they attracted to somebody's face versus your product, right? Are they attracted to a headline that really isn't the main point you want them to read? Are they spending time reading all of the content, or are they just skimming down the page quickly? It's not uncommon for us to see with eye tracking, for instance, that brands like to put up a huge block of text and a big paragraph and combine all of their products, features, and benefits in that one massive paragraph. We have found that consumers don't read that entire paragraph. They skim it very quickly and they get one or two lines in and they move on and they start scrolling because they're looking for other cues that they don't have to work as hard at, right? So for instance, a learning out of this is you should always break everything down into bullet points. You should always be using bullet points over paragraphs because it just seems remedial, right? It seems pretty simple, but what we're seeing is visitors are not reading your content, and then all of that great information gets missed. So you have to make it bite-sized and easy for them to scan. And so what a heat map can do is allow you to very quickly and easily get a AI eye tracking study done as a heat map that would normally take you weeks to run, even on your own site, to have enough data. Now we're able to use AI and all of these research studies that we've baked in to help it understand what people are looking at on your page. And you can do this on your site because it doesn't require you to add any code. You literally go to user input, and one of the tool sets, you would enter in your URL of your page, it pulls that up, and then you're able to run that. So heat maps is definitely one for on-site that I would be taking a look at.
So this is very interesting. So all you have to do is just go pick up the URL for your product page, plug it into this AI heat map tool, and then it will tell you where the action is, right?
Yes, exactly. Now, there's a second way you can do something very similar, and this dives a little bit deeper, and it's called user testing. So with user testing on your page, you can, again, go to user input and get input from real users where you are submitting the URL and we are running user tests on your behalf. So you describe who your audience is, who are your ideal customer profiles. We have access to, at this point, several 100,000 trained user testers. These are all testers who have been trained to talk out loud about the experience they're having on your site. So as they're going through it, they're able to tell you what they're thinking and why they're making the decisions they're making. Whereas analytics or any of the other types of quantitative data that really tells you what people are doing on your site, it only takes you so far. You have to guess and take that leap to understand why they're making those choices, or in a lot of instances, why they're not making the choices you want them to make, right? Yeah. So this is where user testing can really come in handy. So with user testing, you're able to direct people to your page, ask them to complete simple tasks. Go to this page and tell me the top 5 benefits of this product, or go to this page and, tell me if it's good for X, Y, or Z purposes. or even send them to your seller page that might have a few different variations of a product, and ask them to find the one that is best for their needs, where they would go through 2 or 3 products and tell you, what they're thinking, what they're seeing. Oh, we did this with a company that sells tents for camping, right? And what we found was that people were having a really hard time understanding how many people could fit in a tent, even though it clearly said this is a 2-person tent, a 4-person tent, and 1-person tent. The problem, and it was in the product description, like the headline of the product. The problem was that consumers didn't understand, okay, 2 people, how much room is that? And the brand was trying to make it easy, but then they're like, hey, I'm 6'7". How can I fit 2 people in this tent for real? Or am I going to take up the entire tent? Right.
Yeah.
And so what we ended up doing for them was putting a comparative illustration together of exactly how much room if somebody was 5'10" in the US laying in this tent, what did that look like? And we did a top-down view so they could see the average height of a human in the US and what it would look like sitting in a tent. The brand and the manufacturer would have never done that on their own because they did not understand consumers did not get what 2-person tent meant, because they wanted more details they weren't providing. They said, we're going to make it easy and say this tent is for 2 people. Everyone knows what 2 people is. That should be easy for them to understand. And in reality, consumers had a different point of view. They wanted more information that was not being provided in an easy fashion.
This came out of the user testing.
Yes, exactly.
I see. Do you know if any of the data in terms of what was the conversion rate before and what it became after this boom?
Yeah. So on average, what we see is about a 9-to-1 return on investment. So what I mean by that is for every dollar that you spend on user testing, you will see about $9 in additional revenue come out of that. So it is an extremely high return on investment activity, and it can really propel you above your competition who's not doing this. And that, as you know, on Amazon, once you start selling more than competition, Amazon starts recommending you more because they want to sell more as well. So it ends up becoming a competitive advantage that you can have over your competition.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot stress the importance of conversion rate enough, mainly because it goes straight to what Amazon wants, which is the best customer experience. And if you are converting a large number of people that come to your product detail page, what that says to Amazon is this is a good product. Yeah. So since Amazon wants great customer experience, they want to put good products in front of more and more and more people. And that then increases your ranking. And then because your rank increases, you get more of the brand share, higher. I mean, there's no end to how much this thing pays off. And every investment, I always say, and a lot of the times it's a crapshoot because we don't know what's going to come out. So, we create now, for example, Premium A+ is the new thing. So Amazon says, okay, it gives an extra 10 to 15%, or some numbers are floating around, but you don't really know what it's doing. So this is a direct way of testing, what kind of a gain you can get out of it, right?
That's exactly true. And one thing that people don't use this for, which I believe they should, and this is like an ultimate cheat code, is to run user testing on your competitor products. Understand how consumers are engaging with your competitor products. Because if you're able to do that, then you can steal what works for them, right? I don't suggest just blindly copying your competitors, but I do believe that if you have data behind what's truly working and resonating, what language is really driving it home for them, steal that. Why not? Right. And the best way to know that is to run user testing or even get heat maps. I talked about the eye tracking heat maps. Have that done on your competitor product pages. You're able to do all of this on site under Amazon's rules without breaking any of them. And you're able to learn so much information before you have to do anything offsite. And I think a lot of consumers, brands think that they can't test A/B test with their consumers. So they don't have a way to optimize. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true.
Yeah. So, John, I want to get into the heat maps a little bit more.
Okay, great.
This obviously is a podcast. We can't really show visuals, even though we are also going to be publishing this on YouTube. We don't really stick to visuals. So describe to us what a heat map is and what it looks like. And most important, how would you use it in your case to take some actions?
Great. So a heat map is named because it shows areas that are hot and cold on a page. Okay, so that's the first thing you should know. A page is going to come out looking like it's going to have a scale of colors from no color all the way up through deep red. Deep red is where there's more attention and people are spending more time looking. Then it cools off from there, right? So hot red, most attention, down to white, which in clear, which is no color and no attention. Nobody looked at it at all. And there's varying levels. It goes, of course, red, yellow, green, blue, right? And blue to clear means nobody looked there or gave it very quick attention. So what this is able to tell you, if you can imagine looking at a web page and seeing these spots and the gradients all over the page, it's going to tell you what are the most important points of this page that people are paying attention to. Now, maybe you want them paying attention to that area, or maybe you don't, right? For instance, I said this earlier, but maybe somebody's looking at the face of a person holding your product, but they're not looking at the product. And this is a common mistake we see quite a bit, where brands think they want to incorporate people into their photos because it makes it seem more relatable. The challenge with that is that as humans, we're drawn to other humans and especially faces. So when you look at heat maps, it's very, very common to see eyes drawn to the picture of the person and not the product. And maybe if you set it up correctly, you can get people to look at the product, even though it's near or, with a person. But this is why you see so many apparels with just a shot from the neck to the waist, if they're wearing a jacket, right? And it doesn't show the person's face, because that has been tested to show people will look more at the face than they will and develop opinions about that person based on their face and not the opinions of the product, which is really what you want them to focus on.
Yeah. So this is an interesting concept. So I've had several guests and we follow this all the time. You're right. You want to put people in the pictures. And what you want to do is you want to show people in the pictures using the product. And that's because the psychology of the shopper is they don't want to look at just pictures of a product. They want to see themselves using the product in the picture. Or they want to advocate for that product in the picture. So it is quite possible that shoppers may not really pay that much attention to the product itself, but to what else is in the picture. It may also be an activity, like, for example, the product may be for gardening, and then they may see somebody doing gardening, and then they are more interested in the act of gardening rather than the product. So that association with the product comes, it's implied already. So that then leads to making a decision. So in your experience, not paying attention to the product rather than the faces, is that a bad thing or a good thing or a neutral? Where does that land?
Well, I think that the challenge here is you want people paying attention to the product, right? You want them buying the product. And you're right, you do want people involved, but what you don't want to do is you want to have it in an anonymous fashion. And as soon as you put a face in the picture, you have lost that for the most part, because you're seeing that person in using the product in the image, not yourself. And again, this is why you will see photos cropped quite often where a person is in the background where you can't really make out a lot of the details, or you'll see somebody from behind, right, where they're walking away from you. If especially this is very common in like backpacks or outdoor or footwear, where you see only the idea, suggestion of a person. You don't see the actual person's face, etc. And we have tested this across apparel quite a bit, where if you include a face, it can make your product seem more relatable, but people focus much more on whether or not they like the person than whether or not they like the product, right? So they look at somebody and say, just based on looks, do I think I could be friends with them? Yeah. And if they have a positive association, then they'll probably like your product a little more. But if they don't, then they're probably not going to like your product as much. And so the challenge becomes you're relying on a model to sell your product as opposed to the merits of the features and benefits of the product itself.
Yeah, this almost reminds me of the commercial, Priceline commercial with Captain Kirk. And so it's, I mean, there is a reason why brands pick these spokespeople, right? Because they are likable people and they want to sell. I have something important for all my listeners. Sellers lose money on lost or damaged inventory with Amazon, which can add up to a lot over a year. Did you know that there is a way to claim all your losses? GETIDA is the global leader in Amazon FBA auditing and reimbursements for Amazon FBA sellers worldwide. They deliver results with no upfront costs. They get paid only when you get paid. Visit www.getida.com/legends to learn more and sign up. And thanks to our friends at GETIDA, your first $400 in reimbursements will be free. That's www.getida.com/legends. And that's www.getida.com/legends. Okay, so then tell us, how do you use this heat map? So now you're seeing the colors. So what are the actions that you would take associated with some of those colors?
Well, this is where looking at as many heat maps as you can will help you start recognizing patterns and gain some knowledge. Now, the benefit of working with user input on this is we will give you some bullet points on what we see. So that way you have a good understanding of how you should turn this into action, because we've seen thousands and thousands of these heat maps now, right? In general, some high-level tips. You should look for immediately for what are the hot areas. What is going on in those hot areas? And is it drawing the attention to where you want on the page? If not, consider recropping the photo, changing the headline, or removing that element altogether, right? Now, if consumers are not paying attention to something you want, that usually means either they're distracted by something else or they're not finding that interesting. I mentioned earlier, big paragraphs of text. I call them walls of text, because what happens is we see quite often consumers are reading and they're skimming the page. They hit a big wall of text and they immediately think to themselves, I don't want to spend the energy reading all of that. I'm here to see a visual experience. I want to know very quickly if this is the right product for me. And that's why you should go to things like bullet points. And you'll quickly see something like that by seeing a dark red line on the left side of the text, and the right side fades out very quickly to where before the end of the line, you'll see that it's clear. And that means people did not even read to the end of the line of the paragraph. Right. So the right side of the paragraph will be blank. The left side will have dark red. That means people just skimmed down and then looked at the first couple of words of each line of the paragraph and then moved on. Now, you were hired a copywriter. You spent all this time and effort writing copy you thought was amazing. That paragraph is going to sell your product, but nobody's reading it.
Right.
So what's the benefit, right? So there's a lot of things like that. Now, we can transition if you want to offsite, because there are ways to solve and understand how copy is performing with some offsite optimization techniques when you're ready to get to there.
Yeah, I want to move on to that. I have a couple more questions that I'm sure that listeners are dying to find out.
Great.
So one of the things that Amazon is doing recently, and this is a new feature, in the old days being probably like 4 or 5 months ago, you would put your URLs for the alternative pictures, alternative images in your flat file and then upload it. And unless you went to Seller Central and upload them by hand, which is not really the recommended way. But either way, that's how you did it. But now Amazon has what's called Image Manager. And you go to Image Manager and you have to name your images specific way, where you have to put the ASIN in the image name and then dot, not a hyphen, dot, and then the short code Amazon provides. Short codes look like front, back, and then they call it PT, like part 1, 2, 3, whatever. So I know Amazon is planning something, because now what they are getting into is they are going to know exactly what picture is serving what purpose. Yeah. So my question to you is this: you land on the product page with that URL. The picture that shows up is the main product picture. And then you have the image stack on the left-hand side. You click on each one and the picture is replaced. So this heat map, how does it pick up those individual pictures? Does it take that into account? Tell us about that.
It does not take that into account. That is where this data point in conjunction with user testing becomes really helpful, right? Because it takes a snapshot of the page as it first loads. Now, if you can deep link, meaning direct link to a specific image to make sure that shows up, then you could test that one image with a heat map. But this is where and why there are multiple on-site and off-site techniques for optimization, because really what we're looking for here is that confidence level, right? I would still trust the heat maps quite a bit, even though I know it's not going to catch every bit of information and interaction, especially on a page.
Yeah. So I guess one way to do it, I'm not sure if you can actually choreograph it that way, but there may be a way to land on the page with another picture selected, and then you could, if it's using a different URL. Okay, so that's something that people can test with. The second question I have is, as you know, you plug in that URL, you have right at the top, you have the main image, and then the pricing info on the right, and then you have the bullets, and then you scan down, and then you come to the A+ pages or premium or regular, and then you keep scrolling, you have other stuff. And then also based on what plugins you use with, browser extensions, you're seeing other information on your page. So does the heat map program pick up everything on that page like a toilet roll, or does it just take a piece of it?
We would see the heat map tool that we have will actually scroll down your entire page and take a screenshot of the entire page and give you a heat map of that. Now, it would not be of your browser settings. It is, you can choose between desktop and mobile. And this is mobile web. It's not the Amazon app, right? But the reality here is we are able to give you what a generic browser would look like, right? Without any additional plugins, etc. So there's no ad blockers, there's no, Seller Central type of plugins and Chrome extensions, etc. It is pure as if a consumer loaded up their browser, went to Amazon, and saw the site. That is exactly what we would be testing.
Also, Prime members see different things than non-Prime.
Mm-hmm.
So which one is the heat map looking at?
Yeah. Well, you could do both, because one of the options is you could, what you could do is take a screenshot and upload the screenshot and have it do testing a heat map on that screenshot. So that is an option as well. So going back to the multiple images, you could, in theory, do multiple images, take a screenshot, send it, screenshot, send it. So that is an option there. But it's not going to be Prime. It's not going to be logged in. If we have the tool go out and take a screenshot, it's going to be as if a new to file customer saw your page. And that would mean new to file to Amazon as well in general.
Great. Okay. Very valuable information. Expect your site to be crashing after this episode airs, because I'm sure a lot of people will be going in and trying to figure out how this is going to help. I have a quick word from our this week's sponsor.
Channeled is a marketplace and e-commerce partner for growing D2C brands. Our senior team provides a more comprehensive approach to marketplace management, including channel P&L, proven strategies, and better execution. We use a data-driven approach for full funnel Amazon ads, including DSP. Get a free account audit and a $1,500 bill credit during your first 3 months if you partner with Channeled. Visit channeled.net/argometrics to learn more.
Great.
I love
Let's now move on to the external. So tell us about offline optimization.
Well, there's a lot more that you can do offline than what we've talked about online. And off page, what I'm talking about here, or offline, is really things where you would take your assets off of Amazon and test them someplace else, right? So there's certain things you can do. Let's start with what's called preference testing. Preference testing is where you can very easily, for instance, put up 2 different images of a product. The same product, 2 different angles, 2 different backgrounds, one with a person in it, one without, and ask a clear question. Which of these do you think is more effective? Right? Or which of these 2 do you prefer? And you can do that with more than 2, right? You can do it with 5, 6, whatever. But the reality here is you're asking real people for their feedback. What is their preference? And this is a good way to get a data point around items that you want to have consumers engaging with, and you want to know what real humans think. That is a good way to get that. So that's called preference testing. And it's something where you would take information off of your Amazon page and test it through preference testing. So we've done this with copy. Which of these 2 describe, say, hey, you are choosing between 2 products. Which of these descriptions do you think gives you more information? Right? Yeah. The key to all of these is you do not want to lead the witness, right? You don't want to lead the tester, and you don't want to put the answer in your question, right? You could say an incorrect way of doing this would be option 1 converts higher than option 2. Which of these do you prefer? Well, you're going to be like, I'm not stupid. Option 1. Because sure. What am I to say that option 2 is better? You already told me option 1 works. So you have to be very careful with how you word these. At the Good, we have team members who are specialized in nothing but user testing. And what they're able to do, and they're experts at, is formulating these questions in a way that it gets to the root of what we want without leading them. So it's a very unique skill set, but something that can be developed over time. And so it just takes some practice. And the easy way to do that is run the question by somebody and in your family, in your life, around you, coworker, etc., and ask them, hey, tell me what you think of this question. And just getting a third party to look at it makes a big difference.
Yeah. You know what happened with one of our clients? We decided to do this. There's a service called pickfu.com. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So we were trying to figure out the best picture to use as the main product picture. and we had two different approaches. So
Okay.
I recommended Pickful, and the client is one of those that likes to just do things very quickly. So the following day, he says to me, "Oh, I did the poll. This is going to be the picture." I did not understand the response. I said, "Are you sure this is it? Because it doesn't look like this was." I said, "Let me see the question you asked." So what we were trying to do was figure out which picture to use as the main product picture, so that in the search results page, as you know, picture is the most important. People gravitate towards that product and then click on. So the goal is, which picture would you prefer to click and find out more, or to click and go to the product page?
Right.
Instead, he asked very open-ended question. He said, "Which picture do you like the most to buy the product?" Well, buying the product involves going to product detail page. It also involves being on the product page, so that so everybody who responded, without exception, assumed that they were already on the product detail page, and they were looking at pictures, and then there were the two pictures, and they said, "Okay, this one, I like it more." But that's not what we were asking.
This is a great example, Nick, of why the question matters. What you ask will determine what you get. And so you have to be very careful with that. So that's a great example.
Yeah, and then we had to run the poll again. So this time we said, you have done a search, and several results came up, and which picture do you like the most to click and go to the product detail page? Then the response came back very different, very different. It wasn't between the two options that we offered. They were still fairly close to each other, but the outcome was a different outcome. So you really want to be specific with the question in terms of what you want. So your point about questions being very important, I mean, we've seen it in action. It's so true.
Yes. So a second one, then this kind of helps you, again, under the same guise of you need to ask the right question, of course. But a second test idea offsite that you should be thinking about is what we call the 5-second test. So what the 5-second test is it shows an image for 5 seconds, and then you take them down, and then you ask a question, right? So this is great for things like first impressions, right? Or what stands out visually. So this is a great complement to that heat map, right? So you understand that maybe an image or a section of your page is creating an issue of some sort because it's getting a lot of attention, and maybe it's not the one you want. So you could put two images next to each other and see what's going to, what do people remember, right? Because that's what's going to really drive it home. So then you ask the questions like, again, what are your first impressions here? And you could be open-ended, or what stood out to you. I would not ask what they prefer, right? Because it's really not about that with a 5-second test. You're really looking to put an image up and ask people what they recalled, because that's what you're looking for here. Did the headline get across? Do they understand what the product is good for? So you could ask the question, why would you use this product? Leave it open-ended like that. And if your headline on the image said something like the best 2-person tent, camping tent for cold winter nights, and then had an image of a tent in some snow, you took it down and you asked that question, people should very clearly answer, oh, it's a tent for sleeping overnight in cold weather. And if they don't answer that, you have to ask yourself, what am I missing? Now, all of these together, both on-site, off-site, all the things we've talked about today, are all really to help you, I like to say, read the label from inside the jar. You are so close to your products. You're so close to the imagery. You're so close to the copy that you know all the answers, right? You wrote the test, you know the answers. But a consumer who's visiting your product page for the first time on Amazon, it does not. They don't understand all of the intricate details. So we need to make sure that you're not leaving anything out. And that's really the nugget out of all of these that you're going to understand is being able to relate better to your customer and understand what their point of view is and what information they need that you're not currently providing.
Yeah, well, it's so true. There is something else, as you were talking about the 5-second rule. Yeah, you better be careful who you are doing that test with, because there are some people, like for example, if you want to get into the FBI or the CIA, and you want to be a spy or an intelligence related guy, they put you in a room and leave you there for a short period of time, and then they take you out and then they start asking, tell us about what color was the walls, what was how many pictures were hanging. So I mean, there are some people who are trained to really pick up on so many little details. So you better not be conducting this test with such people, right?
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. One, I think that community of FBI agents, et cetera, is probably pretty small, right?
Yes.
I also think that the community of representative sample of those on Amazon is what you're going for, right? And that would include the FBI agent community, right? It would include people who maybe need vision assistance, right? And are disabled to some degree and using a screen reader. So you want a large swath of the population so that you can try to get the mass in the middle, but also the ones who are starting to creep out to the edges. And I always recommend an optimization that you optimize for that middle where the most people are. And then over time, continually optimize on your way out to the edges. And that is because your competitors aren't thinking about the edges at all, right? So they're not testing for those folks. So you have some opportunity there to really go in and capture an audience that your competitors are ignoring.
Yeah. So we got the preference testing, right? Preference testing, and we got the 5-second test. Anything else you can share with us only off Amazon?
Well, I think those are the two big ones that are really relevant to Amazon. And I think, there's, again, I encourage people to use all of these for competitive testing. I think that competitive research can make a big difference. And I think a lot of people aren't using it in that way. I also encourage people to test small things and large things, right? So do these optimization tasks with small tests down to one image or where you're testing against multiple images. Also, test, complete copy changes. Run user tests or heat maps on complete changes of the page layout, as much as Amazon will allow you, right? But think about all the variables and permutations of how you can change this page and test it with where you're changing a headline and an image, or not a headline, but the image, etc. You could test ad nauseum. So I really recommend you start with the big items and work your way down to smaller challenges. Or if you have a suspicion, for some reason, maybe user testing told you that consumers aren't reading a headline and they're missing some critical information, fix that and then validate it with more user testing.
John, I just thought of an idea. We do this with my clients when I'm working with them. So we're working on pictures. So as you know, when you are looking to create a picture, that's all you're looking at. So, and typically designers create these pictures and then you're looking at large versions of it, but that's not what people see. Most important, that's not the way picture appears in the search results. So what I do typically is I say, okay, let's see if this is going to work. So I say, go do a search for your product. And then suddenly up comes the search results. I take the screenshot of that page. And then in that screenshot, I say, now crop out one of those search results and then plug your intended picture in there. That's how your search is going to look. So does that look okay? Does it blend into the page or does it stand out? So the reason I'm saying this is because you can actually create a mock-up page with your intended changes and then publish that to the web as if it's Amazon, because your tool does not care about it's an Amazon URL or not. It's just anything, right?
Exactly.
So basically create that Amazon page as a mock-up as it would look with your intended changes, and then plug into your tool and see what the heat map shows before you do anything, right?
That's exactly it. And again, that's why you use all of these in conjunction, because you're able to test different things, do some more quickly than others and more cost effectively than others, but you want multiple data points in the end. And so as you say, it can be really valuable, but you have to use it. You have to test. And if you're just ignoring this, you're going to get left behind pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, this is always the same. One thing to know, you are going in the right direction. If you're going from A to B, and then let's say there are no road signs, you are out there in the wilderness. Well, you don't just look at your compass and say, okay, I'm going to go in this direction at the beginning and then never look at it again, right? So you keep looking at it. So
yes, very much so.
That's the way to use data. You have to keep looking at your data, make sure, and this is the same thing with your optimization. Well, this is a great conversation, and I love the subject of conversion because that addresses everything, and what you shared with us is so valuable. So let's now move on to my favorite part of the recording. That is to learn a little bit about you. So I am always interested because we are all leaders in business. We're running these Amazon operations that are complex, and anybody who is providing for that community, seller community, is also trying to offer something of value. So it takes a certain amount of vision and leadership, but most important, entrepreneurship. So I want to know what your life experiences have been like that led you to what you're doing today. So tell us, I'm not interested in the bio part, but I'm interested in, tell us, growing up, when was the first time you realized that you were a little bit different and then you wanted to be entrepreneurial, so to speak?
Well, I would say I had a paper route. And I know that's not a thing anymore, but I was on a bike delivering papers every early morning as a child. And when I realized that I was an entrepreneur when the route, the next street over, became available, I said, I'm gonna add to my route. And I did that 3 or 4 times, to the point where it would take me an hour and a half to complete my route because I had so much of the neighborhood now. And every time my kid would be like, I'm not getting up at 5:30 in the morning to deliver papers, be like, that's fine, I'll take over your route, no problem. I ended up having a little mini empire based on delivering newspapers. And I really loved it because I knew every time I tossed a newspaper at a door, I was making 10 or 15 cents. And I knew that every day, the more newspapers I delivered, the more money I could make and have to spend and save and do whatever I wanted to do with. And I realized that the money that I was getting from that it wasn't about buying things. It was about giving me freedom. And I was hooked at that point because I was raised in a middle-class family. It's not like we had a lot of money. And so if I wanted something or I wanted to go do something, I had my paper out. I could just go do it. And so from that point on, I realized I wanted to have unlimited potential, unlimited capacity. And the only way to do that is to run my own business and not have a salary. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I did end up working at a management consulting firm, which was a great experience. I learned a lot. I basically, as soon as that role ended, I immediately started my own company because I was like, that's going to be my next step. I want to start this and learn on the job as quickly as possible. So I jumped right in, and here we are 14, almost 15 years later.
Wow, it's a great success story. So when you started delivering papers, whose idea was that?
It was my idea. I actually saw a bundle of newspapers on a neighbor's driveway because they delivered at like 3 a.m. And then as a paper boy, you pick up the newspapers, put them in bags, you rubber band them so you can throw them. But you have to do all that prep work before you actually hop on a bike or start walking around the neighborhood. And so I would, one morning, I saw the paper sitting there, and I said, "Oh, well, like what? Why are these newspapers out? What's, who? That means somebody has to deliver them." And it kind of just clicked to me that, oh, that's a job someone does. And I didn't really even think about how we got our newspaper every morning at our house. I just realized that, oh, well, I could read it. And so I saw an ad in the paper one day. I was just reading the sports section, and there was a little ad that said, "Hey, they're recruiting paper carriers. If you're interested, call this number." I called the number. They called me back the next day and said, "Hey, if you're interested, come, meet." And I convinced my parents to take me. They were excited that I would have a job. And I did it through high school. So I had that paper route for a number of years. I think probably 8 years or so. And let me tell you, there were days I did not want to get up and deliver that newspaper. But it taught me grit. It taught me to get up and do it, whether it was pouring rain, freezing cold, or the most beautiful morning ever.
By the way, where was this?
In Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up.
So it's not exactly a warm climate, right?
Not always. No, not always. Yeah. And then, the other thing is I had to get used to talking about money very early, because I had to go collect for the paper each month. So I would go door to door saying, "Hey, I'm here to collect for the papers." And, it would be 10, $20. It wasn't much, but I would have to ask for the money if I wanted to get paid. And so there's very few things in business that can be as impactful as being okay talking about money. I think a lot of people are just afraid to talk about money. And, I got real used to it at a very young age.
So first time you saw those papers sitting in front of the door, loose, where you got the idea, why are they like this? There must be a better way to handle this. And the time that you saw the ad, where now they're looking for, so some time must have passed between those two events, right?
It did probably, I don't recall exactly how long, but there was definitely several months in there where I saw that and I said, "Oh, that's someone's job. I wonder how that works. I wonder how they do that and what they get paid to do it." And then I saw the ad, and it said in the ad that they paid so much, it was like 15 cents per paper delivered or something of that sort. And, again, this is, 30 some years ago now. Right. So, newspaper was a lot cheaper back then, inflation and everything. But it was an interesting thing because I recalled, oh yeah, I was wondering about that. I thought I could do that job. That's not hard. And so I called the number and set it up to be able to deliver.
So, I mean, this was also adding another route and another route and another route. So it's a real enterprise, right? So you're running it like an enterprise. So this must be, do you have any siblings?
I do. I have an older sister. She's a couple years older than me. And
Is
she was not up, and she was not up in the morning with me by any means.
Okay. And how did your parents take this, that your entrepreneurial initiatives?
They were extremely supportive. I can't tell you the number of times my mother would come wake me up and get me out of bed so that I was on time. My father would help me deliver the Sunday newspaper because there were so many ads that it was super heavy. And so he would drive a van around with the newspapers in the back, and I would walk up and deliver 10 of them and then go back to the van, get the next batch. And
Became your employee.
eventually, as I got older, he started asking for his share of Sunday deliveries. I think more than anything else to help teach me that business lesson. There were lots of years where he helped me for free, and just to teach me the value of entrepreneurship and working hard and everything else.
Yeah. So, I mean, delivering paper is a simple job, but the way you approached it, there's got to be a better way. I mean, that's the core driver of any entrepreneur coming up with an idea. So connect that with us to what you're doing today is in terms of working on conversion. Where did that come from?
Well, very similar. We mentioned at the beginning that I'm 6'7", and that means in part, I also have a large foot. I wear a size 16 shoe, and it's very hard to find size 16 shoes. If you can imagine, Nike, most running shoes that Nike makes only go up to a 15, which is still quite large, but they stop at 15. So when I was younger, I had a lot of challenges finding my size. And I actually went to Nike's website and was looking for shoes, and I could not filter by size. They had a grid of shoes. You could look at the shoes. You had to click on every single shoe to see if it came in your size. And I found that extremely annoying as a consumer because, yes, it served the masses. It served everybody who wears, the standard size 10 shoe or whatever it is in the US. And the problem with that was that I wasn't a standard fit. I just, needed something different, but I had to, in order to get that information, I had to click on every single shoe and see if they had it in my size. And I remember thinking, there's a better way to do this. And why is this site such a pain in the butt to use? And so I decided right then and there that this was a problem that needed to be solved. There were others like me. And so the good, when we started, our mission statement is actually to remove all of the bad online experiences until only the good remain. And the idea here was, let's remove those from the internet. We can fix those. And we're still on that mission all these years later. We've helped out hundreds of brands, including Nike. We've actually worked with Nike and Xerox and The Economist and Adobe and Autodesk, and I could keep going on and on, as well as hundreds of mid-sized brands and lots of Amazon sellers. But it's been something that's been a fun journey for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you are the ultimate example of there's got to be a better way. So you started that when you were a kid and you're still pursuing it. So it's a great story. I loved hearing about it. So John, tell us, how can people reach you? And then you mentioned discount code. So tell us, how can people take advantage of it?
So if you are interested in getting a hold of me specifically, feel free to just send me an email. I'll give out my specific email address. It's just John, Jon, at thegood.com. I've given that out hundreds of times. Nobody's ever abused it. I would hope that'd be the same case here. But if you email me, I do try to read every email and reply, be as helpful as I can. If you're interested in the tools we talked about today, through a company that we started and own, it's called User Input by The Good. So it's userinput.io. And if you go to userinput.io/legends, we have a page we'll set up just for this podcast for people to listen. And or at checkout on User Input, you can use the code LEGENDS. Both of those will get you access to a 20% off of user testing and heat maps. So you can go and use those tools and get them at a slight discount to help make it a little easier to get started.
Great. That's very kind of you. And I'm sure, like I said, make sure your servers are up and running because they may get some extra traffic. Thank you, John. This was great conversation, very valuable, and loved your story. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. I really appreciate it.
Before we wrap up, don't forget to visit www.getida.com/legends to learn more and sign up to claim money for your lost or damaged inventory with Amazon. Your first $400 in reimbursements will be free. www.getida.com/legends, and that's www.getida.com/legends. Also, don't forget to visit www.channeled.net/argometrics to get a free account audit and a $1,500 bill credit. You will join the hundreds of DTC brands they have helped reach their goals. The address is www.channeled.net/argometrics. That's CHANNELED.net/argometrics. Thank you. And this brings us to the end of another episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the episode, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too.